Welcome to the 7th edition of DealstreetAsia's Asia PVC Summit. This time, we are back bigger and better. I just want to start off by showing you a picture of this was us in 2019, day one of our summit. Little did we know at that time that it would take us 3 full years before we are back at a physical face-to-face event. As Wayne said, I want to thank you all for being here. The DealstreetAsia team has gone all out to ensure that this is going to be the best commitment of your time for the next 2 days. Here are some of the speakers who are joining us today. Day one of the summit is primarily focused on the private equity space and the LP space. I want to spend a few minutes before getting into the other logistics part, but just a few minutes to talk through 5 trends that our reporters have been tracking in the private equity space, like editorial trends that we have been writing about. Trend number 1, 2021 was a blockbuster year for Asian private equity. 2022 and beyond looks quite unpredictable. Let me just give you an example or just a few numbers to explain this. After 2 years of sharp declines, both fundraising and exit rebounded in 2021. But all of this has gone downhill or got reversed in 2022. Asia-focused PE funds raised about $226 billion in total last year. But this year, in the first 9 months of this year, it's only been about $97 billion. China was one of the best places for private equity to invest in Asia. But if you look at this year, especially 2022, China has seen some of the lowest inflows of private equity. Let me give you another example. We have Kenneth of Baring Private Equity who joins us on the opening panel. But recently, Baring said that it had sat out on as much as $6 billion worth of deals because it expects valuations to fall a lot further and it wants to see out how the recession plays. The second big trend that we are tracking is that global funds, a lot of these global funds and regional funds, they are raising bigger and bigger funds for Asia. And what are the implications of this? Again, let me start with a few examples. I mentioned Baring earlier. They just this month, they closed their latest Asia fund at over 11 billion. Other funds that closed this year, Blackstone at 11 billion, CVC at about 6 billion. And currently the firms that are raising, TPG is doing a $6 billion Asia fund, Bain Capital is doing a $5 billion Asia fund, Carlyle is doing $8.5 billion Asia fund, and Warburg recently said they're looking at $2.5 billion India-specific fund. Again, if you look at last year, KKR raised a $15 billion Asia fund. After that, this year, they went on to close a $1.1 billion Asia credit fund. They're also raising a $1.5 billion Asia tech fund. And in addition to all of that, KKR said they'll be doing dedicated vehicles for infrastructure and real estate in Asia. So be it tech, non-tech, real estate, whatever sector that you take, global PE firms and some of the big regional firms, they're going to be competing very hard for all the significant deals in Southeast Asia and India. And that's going to be making it very tough for some of the smaller mid-market firms and the country-specific private equity firms, especially in Southeast Asia. The other big trend that we've been tracking, 2022 is going to be a landmark year for private credit in Asia. Again, let me take you through some data points to explain why. 2012 was the year private credit took off in Europe, and they had a good run. The firms there had a good run over the last 10 years. But if you look at 2022 data, for the first time ever, private debt fundraising in Asia has overtaken that of Europe. So it's fairly safe to assume that this is going to be the decade that this sector takes off in Asia. And we're going to have a special session on private debt later today. Just look at the number of private debt firms or credit firms that are either launched specific Asia vehicles or have opened offices in this part of the world. Trend number 4 that our team has been tracking. Till 2021 end, and this is related more to tech, when the fundraising boom was at its peak, most of the deals across Southeast Asia and India, the growth stage deals, they were led by the likes of Tiger Global, SoftBank, Naspers, DST Global, Hito Sophia, Vela Ventures, all of these are US-based, mostly US-based funds. But with many of these growth firms, hedge funds in the US suffering significant losses because of the tech sell-off there, Anecdotally at least, we're hearing a lot of examples of growth funds in this region, as well as private equity firms now starting to look at tech companies here. They completely lost out over the last 2 years, but now they're all back in the game. And I think in the next 6 to 12 months, we'll see a lot more of Southeast Asian tech deals being led by growth funds and private equity funds who last year did not participate at all. And finally, one of the most important themes that we have been tracking, ESG is no longer it's no longer a fad, it's become mainstream. And this will have a significant impact on new investments, portfolio management, as well as exits. Now, ESG has become an important investment factor across the whole chain. When you start with, even after an investment is made, be it whether you're an LP or a GP, now a lot of firms have started checking with their portfolio companies in terms of whether ESG is part of their strategy. So it becomes, it's part of the strategy. It's part of invest better. So ESG is now part of due diligence for all deals. It's also own better. When LPs, GPs talk about their portfolio, they talk about ESG being a value creator. And finally, when you look at decarbonization, that's become the cornerstone for ESG investments across Asia. And we have 2 special sessions on this theme, one today and one tomorrow. Before I move on, I also want to leave you with 5 key data points, but these are specific to Southeast Asia private equity. These were put together by my colleagues, Andy, Deepshika, Kunal from our research team. The first data point that I want to leave with you. Here, one number stands out. When you look at the final closes for Southeast Asia specific funds, hardly any final closes for Southeast Asia specific PE funds this year. Let's look at numbers from last year. So if you look at last year's numbers, the chart on your right, okay, Southeast Asia specific PE funds closed nearly 3 billion. And there's hardly anything this year. The third Southeast Asia specific data point that I want to leave with you is we've had 5 new PE firms announce vehicles specifically for the region. That's another $3 billion in dry powder for Southeast Asia. But it's not all doom and gloom. There are several regional and global funds who have Southeast Asia allocations, and most of them have many of them hit final closes, several of them have made interim closes, and others are raising capital. And you can see the figures on the screen. And the final data point that I want to leave with you, again, here's another big positive. There are 43 Southeast Asia focused funds, private equity funds, in the market today, raising a combined $11 billion. There's also 43 global funds which have a Southeast Asia allocation, and these firms together are raising a combined $83 billion. So, there is enough capital, there is enough dry powder available for this region. Let's move on to the agenda. So what do we have on the agenda? I'll start with a couple of fireside chats that we have. We have one on the LP perspective, and then we have a founder joining us, Ronnie Screwvala, who is one of India's most renowned enterprising entrepreneurs over 3 decades. He runs a unicorn called Upgrad. He joins us for a fireside chat this morning. And we end the day with Ravi Thakran, who is the former ex-group chairman of LVMH Asia. And he's going to talk about what the future holds for private equity in Asia. We also have several panels lined up for the day. For the LPs panel, we have executives from the likes of Adam Street Partners, IFC World Bank, and then we have specific sessions on private credit, as I mentioned earlier. We have sessions on the secondary scene in Asia, which is just starting to take off, even in Southeast Asia, and also a session on scaling through impact through private capital. A bunch of GPs, like leading GPs in the region, will join us for several specific panels, and these include how PE firms are handling the down cycle, why are GPs still continuing to bet on Southeast Asia's macro story, and the blurring lines between private equity and tech investments. Day two of our summit is largely for VCs, funded startups, and unicorns. Again, we have several sessions. Oh, sorry. Okay, my slides are slightly off. Just a second. Yes, okay, I missed out on this. Yeah, we have a special LP session. There are lots of LPs who have joined us today. Thank you so much for it. So we have a special LP session that a bunch of special LP sessions lined up today. For example, today in the LP's Lounge, which is sponsored by Deal Cloud, we have 2 fireside chats. Bert of Silverhorn joins us, Sarah Chan of the Next Billion, so they join us for fireside. So if you're an LP, make sure you join us for the fireside chats during the coffee breaks. Yeah, so the other 2 LP sessions that I have are for tomorrow. So we have a breakfast session tomorrow, which is sponsored by Regal, and that is, we talk about emerging ecosystems, electric mobility, clean technology, and beyond. And then during the lunch break tomorrow, the DealstreetAsia team, the data points that I mentioned, we will be releasing our private equity report for the first 9 months of this year, and we're doing that in partnership with Ontra. Again, make sure you don't miss out on these sessions, and if you have not registered for this, please approach the team at our booth, and they will ensure that you're registered for these sessions. Yeah, back to day 2. Day 2, like I said, is more for VCs, funded startups and unicorns. We have several panels, including one on VCs having a diversity problem. The number of women partners in Southeast Asian VCs are pretty low. We look at the data points there in tomorrow's session. Early stage deals, why are they still hot? That's another session panel that we have. We have a specific session on cross-border SaaS deals and also venture investing during a funding winter. And then in terms of themed panel themes for tomorrow, we have one on fintech, we have one on the Kirana Warung Tech in India and Indonesia, and another on decarbonization. Just changing gears, I just want to spend a minute explaining about DealstreetAsia's data product. The data product that we launched last year, it helps you identify the right companies to invest in or acquire across markets and sectors. It gives you the exact shareholding of all the private companies which have either a PE investment or a VC investment, and you can find accurate information on their funding data and also access their financial performance. My colleagues Andy and Deepshika, who are part of our data team, they will be at the booth. They'll be happy to take you through the product, and all of you in our audience, you have access to our data products. We have a trial access. So the next 2 days, play around with our data product, check out the offering, and if you have anything that you want to sort of ask us to explain to you, we'll be more than happy to do it. And our data offerings also include a lot of research reports. So do check out the research reports that our team has put together for our data subscribers. Finally, we are a subscription media, and we would love to have your support. So make sure to join our subscriber network to enjoy unique benefits. And if you haven't done so already, please scan the QR code that you have on your respective tables or on the screen. We are offering 70% off. Thank you so much for your support. Before I leave, I want to just touch base on our next event. We are bringing back our Jakarta Summit. The dates are January 12, 2023. Please add it to your calendars. And now, why is this important? Now, even as the global economy is being battered, Indonesia continues to be a success story. The rupiah is relatively untouched despite the strengthening of the dollar against most currencies across Asia. And finally, Indonesia's political order has come good. It has delivered. And we are seeing increased number of investors, whether it's PE, VCs, flocking to that country. We also have the dates for our summit next year. And our commitment next year is to make this event much bigger and better, 2x of what we're seeing this time around. Next year, it'll be across 3 days. Okay, the dates are on your screen. Please add it to your calendars. It's September 11, 12, and 13. And we'll also do parallel ballrooms on all 3 days next year. I want to finally thank our sponsors, because without them, our summit would not have been possible. You can see all our sponsors on the screen. A special thanks to Ontra, Regal Capital, EWTP, and Deal Cloud. And also I want to call out Red Hill. They have been the communications agency Red Hill. They've been a sponsor for 7 straight years, all 7 years of our summit. Thank you, Jacob and team, for your support. And thank you all the sponsors for your support. The representative of our sponsors are here. Their booths are outside. Reach out to these companies during the breaks, visit their booths, and get to know more about them. Once again, thank you all for being here. We have an intense 2 days coming up. Just, sit back, put your phones on silent, just enjoy the moment. But don't miss out on the networking. We have great networking sessions lined up during the breaks. Thank you so much.